right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back. This is Strange Planet. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing the U.S. debt and the U.S. debt ceiling deal that was created by both President Joe Biden and Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Now, there is a great deal that is involved with this, and I'm going to pass it over to Rook here, who's going to tell you more about what the deal actually is and some of the facts and numbers behind it.
All right. Well, so as he said, the debt ceiling deal was basically put together by the White House along with McCarthy, the Speaker. And essentially, it was the latest iteration of a shakedown that's been going on for, since Obama was in office, where the Republicans, once they get control of either house of Congress, they say to a Democratic president, we're not going to pay our debt. People need to understand the way that this country works is that the president and the executive branch cannot spend federal dollars without them being appropriated by Congress. So it's not like Congress or the White House gets a credit card and gets to just spend money. I know, a lot of people have said it's like a credit card. No, it's not. Because the money that the White House and the executive branch, that's all of our agencies, the money that they spend has to be provided for by Congress. It has to be provided for by law, either explicitly or through some type of authorization. It has to be there. So basically, Congress has ordered, and in many cases, the White House and the executive branch is compelled to spend the money, or else they're in violation of law because the executive branch executes the law. Their job is to execute the laws faithfully. And so when Congress tells the White House, the executive branch, to spend money, tells agencies to spend money on these particular programs, they have to spend the money. Otherwise, they're in violation of the law. Now, there's some discretion in terms of individual programs. But if you ever have read through an appropriations bill, it can get pretty granular in terms of what kind of programs are for each agency. And so it's important for people to understand that when Republicans complain about, oh my God, they're spending so much money, no, it's Congress has told the executive branch to spend this money. It's not even like the executive branch needs to seek permission. It's like, no, the actual budget comes from the Congress. The Congress sends a president a budget every year, and it appropriates funds that must be spent by different departments over the next fiscal year. Okay? And so let's just talk about, what happened now with this latest iteration.
All right.
So the debt ceiling is the amount of money that the country is allowed to borrow. So the country is authorized to borrow up to a certain amount. And once it gets to that amount, we can't borrow anymore. So we can't pay our debts.
So it caps out
past that certain amount. And so, like I said before, Congress tells the executive branch, here's the money. You have to spend it. Here's the, borrow money, whatever. You have to spend money on these programs. That's what Congress says. And then the executive branch, executes the law. They spend the money. Now, Republicans apparently don't give a fuck about our credit. It was during the Obama administration when they last threw a hissy fit over the debt ceiling that, we still paid our debt eventually. But the fact that the Republicans threatened the country and said that we weren't going to pay our debts, the fact that they even played with it got our nation's credit downgraded for the first time in history.
Oh boy.
So our credit, our the faith in our country that its word is its bond was reduced because of Republican actions and their refusal to pay the debts that they forced the country to incur. Okay, so back to McCarthy, this has been the pattern and practice of Republicans for many, many years. It's just, when there's a Democratic president, you don't pay, you threaten to not pay the debt and then try to extract concessions from political concessions and spending concessions from the Democratic president. And that's usually in the form of cuts to domestic programs, which people will be upset over. And then when conditions are bad in the economy, or, when people aren't getting services that they got before those cuts were made, then leading up to the election, oh, look at how Republicans say, look at how horrible the economy is. You can't feed your family, blah, blah, blah. Well, we had to make these cuts that you imposed on us. You didn't allow us to make these cuts in the way that we wanted. You told us, you had to cut such and such program.
Right.
And so people turn, it's a very, very cynical game that they're playing, because they know that the average voter is not going to pay attention to, how this came about. They're
The details.
basically going to say, I had, these services before. Now I'm not getting these services. Look at who's president. Now I have to be angry at them. And that's the game that Republicans have been playing for over a decade now. So this latest deal, basically, in order to pay our debts, the Republicans again have made Joe Biden cut, a lot of money from domestic programs in the coming years. And so, of course, military spending and spending on veterans isn't reduced, and will actually increase a little bit. But as far as various other domestic programs that are important and that people rely on, they're going to be cut in order to pay our nation's debts. And at this point, I'll stop right here and see if you guys, have any comments or questions.
I think we brought this up briefly last week a little bit too, but I just find it funny how every time there's a Democratic president, the Republicans just scream bloody murder as far as, spending. But then, when the tables are reversed and we have the Republican president, it's like they have the freedom to do as they please, and you'll never hear that, come out of their mouths then. So I just find that very hypocritical. You know what I mean?
So I think it's important to outline the sequence of events here. Because when Obama took office in 2009, right, January 2009, he inherited a $1.4 trillion deficit. Now, the deficit is the amount of money every year that we borrow, that we have to go into debt for. Now, the overall national debt is the accumulation of deficits year over year. So when we're saying we pay down the debt, we're paying down the total debt. But every year we spend more money than we take in. That's the deficit.
Right.
So when Obama took office, even before he sat down at the Oval Office, in the Oval Office for the first time, he inherited a $1.4 trillion deficit. And he inherited an economy that was on the verge of collapse.
True.
So not only were we in the hole in terms of a deficit, our economy was broken and banks were about to collapse and different industries were about to collapse. So he had to spend a lot of money to get us back on track with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, right? And so that was like $800 billion. That actually did increase our debt and our deficit. And it included some tax cuts as well for, middle class and poorer people. But, when it was all said and done, Obama, not only did he fix the economy, but he also reduced our annual deficit from 1.4 trillion to 585 billion.
Wow.
He almost cut it to a third of what he inherited. And the whole time he had to deal with an economy that was on the verge of collapse, and he brought it back from that, right? And not only that, but he left office with a much lower deficit. For all the whining and bitching that Republicans do, he left office with about a third of the deficit.
That's incredible.
Right? So now the nation decides to put Trump in office.
Oh, man.
Argue as to, the extent to which our nation got to participate in that election. But, our system chose Trump, okay? Trump inherited, as I said, the $585 billion deficit that Obama left him. And had Obama continued being president, obviously he couldn't run for a third term. But if, his successor, Hillary, was elected, we probably would have done further deficit reduction.
You're right.
But guess what happened?
The opposite.
When Trump got in office. As soon as he fucking got in office, right? He decided, you know what? I'm going to go on a spending spree by giving the largest tax cut in history in a way that favored rich people. And so that alone ballooned our deficit. By fiscal year 2021, it was $3 trillion.
Wow.
That's more than twice what Obama inherited.
Yeah. For real.
And, it went from 585, which is almost a half a trillion, to 3 trillion. That's almost 6 times what Obama left him.
That's scary is what that is.
How the fuck can Republicans complain and claim that Democrats are spenders and Democrats do this and that with, they don't care about the deficit and whatever and the debt. And yet, when Trump got in office, where were the Republicans then? Yeah. Where were the Republicans then?
They their head in the sand.
Now, the funny thing about it is, once Biden got in office, guess where the deficit went? Even before this deal. Guess where it went?
You're talking about since Biden stepped in?
Right.
Probably decreased.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, you would assume. I mean...
Yeah, you want to assume that somebody's, significantly with a brain in their head.
Right, exactly. Because, he knows what he's doing, but I don't know the numbers. I'm assuming you have them.
No, I mean, Trump left office with a $3.1 trillion deficit.
Holy shit.
Meanwhile, Republicans wanted to reelect him.
Imagine.
And they complain about Democrats being big spenders.
We'd be $6 trillion if, imagine, God forbid, he had another term. That's insanity.
So right now it's, let's see, I think it's around, I want to get the exact number. So
yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, while you're checking it out, if I'm not mistaken, if Trump actually did something smart, which, that doesn't happen, but say he hadn't done all that insane, record-breaking tax cuts for the rich and all that, and say he left Obama's model alone, that would have probably over a period of time gotten us out of the debt period, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It was on a trajectory to potentially eventually get to a surplus.
That's what I thought too. So imagine that. And then he just went in and literally wrecked the whole thing. You don't hear that. You should, but you don't. That's freaking nuts. So it's we were at the cusp of almost getting out of this. And then Trump gets elected, and now we're right back to where we start. Actually, we're not even back to where we started. We're further back than that because now we were even more in debt than when
Okay.
George Bush was president.
So I have the numbers. So the fiscal year 2022, which is the last year we have data on, the deficit was 1.38 trillion.
Really?
Right.
So he cut it nearly in half.
Bro, this is what I do not understand how Republicans can get away with this bullshit. Just saying that
Right.
they are the fiscally responsible party. They're
They're
not.
not.
They
Yeah, at
fucking
all.
suck at it. They destroy our economy every time they get in charge. And
And enrich the rich.
and none of the Republicans say anything about it. But when the Democrats get in office, they threaten not to pay our debts and ruin they attempt to ruin the economy. It's just tiring, this cycle that we're in.
Right? And it just seems never ending.
Yeah, because they can't govern. They really
At
can't.
all. Yeah. Like at all. And they can't be
Yeah.
even trusted with spending, budgets, anything, deficits. It's like
Yeah.
that shit don't matter when they're in office, it so seems, you know what I mean? But that's incredible because we just established now that when Biden first got elected, he was 3.5 trillion in debt. That's what he got inherited.
Yes, he inherited
And now
$3.1 trillion in debt.
And now we're looking at 2022's records, and it's saying 1.5 trillion in debt.
1.38.
1.38. That's incredible. If you that's work being done, and that's what I call progress.
And the Republicans threatened, even though Biden has reduced the deficit since he came in office by that significant amount, Republicans still like to play like, oh, Biden, he's such a big spender. Look at the national debt, when really he's been reducing the deficit.
Oh yeah,
that he inherited.
because you realize this is figuratively speaking, but it seems like it's on track for this. But if you figure from when he was in office to the recorded 2022 date, if it decreased by that much, you would almost figure between now and hopefully the end, if he's able to continue his work, you know what I mean? We could be similar to, or, maybe a little bit more than what Obama left for Trump in the end of this, presidency, right at the end of this term.
You would hope that. The problem is it's harder and harder to cut and to reduce the deficit the closer you get without bringing in more money, frankly. And Biden is running for a second term. The next debt ceiling crisis won't be until January 2025, after the election.
After, yep.
And so if Biden is reelected, guess what? We're going to be right back here again.
Yeah.
Because Republicans are going to be upset that they lost. And they're going to say, oh my God, Biden is spending so much money, even though he's not, compared to their choice for president. And it's really difficult to govern in a country that allows Republicans to get away with this by making them viable candidates for office.
It's true.
They should be allowed nowhere near the Oval Office or anywhere close to controlling a House of Congress.
Yeah, and you look at the numbers we just established here too, in the recent 2 decades or whatnot too, and that's enough proof right there alone.
No, I believe in having a competitive political debate and competitive political parties, but when one political party just isn't interested in governing, but is just interested in destroying our economy, then I just can't see how they could be helpful participants in our political system.
I agree.
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, we're not so much complaining about Republicans as we're complaining about MAGA Republicans. They've taken things to an extreme. And I have a feeling most Republicans have no choice but to go along with it. I mean, allow me to play devil's advocate minute because I don't have no love for Republicans at the moment right now. But I mean, we have great ones in history. Like, wasn't Abraham Lincoln a Republican?
Yeah, like
Yeah, he was.
fucking 200 years ago.
So yeah,
No,
different time
yeah,
period.
you're coming from what seems like a good set of roots, unless there's something we don't know about Abraham Lincoln. Either way, I'm just saying that this environment has become so toxic within the political system itself that no one's happy unless they're fucking somebody. You know what I'm saying? That's what it really feels like. More on the Republican side than the Democrats, but there are the ones on the Democrats there that can be that way too. I mean, not as crazy as Republicans, but we've come so far apart from the middle that we don't even recognize what the middle is anymore.
I see what you're saying about the kind of owning, because that's what it seems like the Republican model is now too. It's just like owning the libs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just do dirty things and drastic things because we're owning the libs. But in the reality of it, they don't realize that they're fucking the country up and fucking the economy up while they're doing it. So they're really screwing us all over. But they're able to, brainwash their cult following to believe that what they're doing is right when literally recorded numbers that we just gave you are showing you that they're doing more destruction than anything.
I mean, you're right. They're doing a lot of, but it's all their plan. It's all to break the system down so they can try to rebuild it their way, Putin's way. I don't know. As good as mine. But it's just, they don't want the America that the founding fathers wanted. That's what it really seems like.
They want their own new one that works just for them. That's what it kind of seems.
I mean, stop me if I'm wrong. It just doesn't feel like any Republican is interested in being a politician. Feels like they're all in it for the money, for the grift, which
And the power.
Well, I honestly think it's more about the money than the power, because what power do they really have when they have, the big gun manufacturers and everybody who's got the real money that contributes to their campaigns and their, little showboats. Like, look at Trump. You know why he has so many rallies? Because he makes money off of it. That's all he cares about.
That's a good point too. And I actually heard he was in debt with a lot of those rallies too. He didn't officially pay a lot of that off. And somehow that's okay. Yeah, I don't get it, but
he's not in debt because he doesn't pay them. And while they try to sue him for it, he lets that sit in litigation and appeal. That's his whole MO. To get it locked up, gridlocked in the judicial system, and eventually someone's going to give up.
So just to recap real quick. So where we stand technically now, the actual deficit is it's just under $1.5 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, just to reiterate. Right? That's where we stand now. So that's
1.38 trillion.
Right. So that's there's no denying that our current president, Biden, definitely is responsible, you know what I mean, for cutting and slashing what it was to what it is now. That's a pretty big difference, you know what I mean, compared to what it was since, we had egghead Trump in there. So I feel like just that fact alone, let alone passing the infrastructure bill, among other things he's done as well, is a good enough push to throw towards his second term. I feel like this should be more positive energy for him to be reelected.
I feel like the fact that he's not a batshit fucking lying ass Republican is a good enough reason.
And that's 100% true.
To reelect him, okay?
Yeah, yeah. That's 100% where we're at. And that's true.
I'm not even gonna entertain the thought of should we elect Biden again? Of course we should.
It's facts. Big facts right
Trump
there.
Seeking revenge on the country and to keep his ass out of prison.
Yeah, that's really his primary focus. Because like we said, I believe in last week's episode, if he doesn't win, which pray to Christ he don't, and I don't think he's going to anyway, but if he doesn't win, he's likely to be behind bars shortly after. You know what I mean? And we were establishing last week as well too about other candidates in that Republican Party that could be the next runner up to try to take the presidency for next term. But I don't see any names that are valid or even strong enough to take Biden after what Biden's already done. So I am definitely, like I said before too, I don't care if it's his head in a jar like Futurama, I'm voting for it. Especially after these facts that we just uncovered right now.
Well, the real litmus test is where are where are the votes coming from? You know, to represent the electors to do it. That's going to be the bigger push. You look at it like what they did in Georgia, where they had to rally the people to vote so they can get those sections, numbers high enough to where it went blue and not red. And while the Republicans look at that as like, oh, they're cheating, there's too many people voting. No, people were exercising their right. They're just
Exactly.
that, there are more people out there who believe that what they're doing is bullshit. Just the only way we can voice our opinion is that vote.
And that's the reason why voting is very important. And if you listen to a lot of Republicans, they'll probably try to downplay it, make it sound like it's bullshit or something. But the reality is the vote matters. So when election, and like I've said before too, even with the smaller elections, with your local stuff, all voting really does matter, especially with your local shit, because that's going to be what affects you a little more directly. But it's just as important, if not more important, with a presidential aspect like this.
When you're have the potential to elect someone like Trump, who's a massive like national security threat to our country, it's more important nationally right now because, I mean, you saw the danger that he put our country in last time, and
And January 6th,
right, and yeah, I mean, they
set up
damn
a
near,
coup, which
they
he
damn
did.
near, they damn near, stormed the Capitol and they did stop for the first time in our history, or at least delayed. They stopped for a period of time the peaceful transfer of power in our country for the first time.
Right. That's despicable if you think about it. I've never seen anything like that.
It's unacceptable. Like,
Yeah.
unless you live in a third world country, that's unfucking acceptable. Like, Republicans just need to go the fuck home, stay the fuck home, and think about what they've done to this country instead of mouthing off.
And pointing the finger.
On a different note, did you guys see the video where Marjorie Taylor Greene was banging the gavel like the decorum in this world must be excellent or whatever the hell it was?
And they all started laughing at her.
Oh yeah,
That was
for
hilarious. Yeah, I did
So-
see that. Yeah, like I forgot. What did she say again?
She called for decorum because she was presiding over the House for, because at different points in time they have someone, the gavel, running the House. The Speaker's not always the one, running the House chamber.
Right. But it was funny because the minute she said that, she's hit it. All of a sudden, you just hear this roar of laughter, just like a wave. It just started and then it stopped.
Right, because that bitch doesn't know what decorum means. Like, she was the one who was live debating Biden during his State of the Union.
Right.
Talk about decorum. Like, she couldn't shut the fuck up during a State of the Union.
I forget too. What state is she in?
Fuck if I know.
Yeah, I fucking forget. But all I know is I remember a couple of months back.
All I know is I'm not going there.
But I remember a couple of months back, she was all happy and riled up because I guess a whole bunch of solar panels and stuff was coming into her
she's from
state.
Georgia.
Georgia? That's what it was. And so a whole bunch of like solar panel stuff was coming in, and she's like riling it up and making a big deal about it like she did it. The hilarious thing is the only reason why any of that was there was because Biden did it. That's the hilarious part. So it's like she's trying to take credit for shit she didn't even do. And I'm just looking at this like, wow, like, really? Like, and I hate to say it, a lot of the sheep will just believe her word of mouth. I mean, that's how she got there in the first place. But like, you always have to trail where things stem from. You can't always go by word of mouth.
Oh, the one thing I do want to add is, given the whole state of the budget and what McCarthy and Biden come together, it does seem like the Republican Party does want McCarthy's head on a plate. It looks like the MAGA end of the Republicans are not happy he didn't screw the Democrats good enough. Now looking to try to remove him as Speaker. So there's
Wow.
for one of the supposedly freedom groups in that system. They want to murder their own group.
It's like, God forbid he works with Biden, right? To do
Yeah,
something positive for the country. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's sad.
It really is. That's our show for this week, everyone. Strange Planet will have new episodes on YouTube every Friday. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.